In the place beyond beginnings, where time folds inward and space weeps from its own irrelevance, there stirred a ripple in the nothing. It was not born, nor did it become. It was a singularity of thought in the silence of the overvoid. The ripple gave rise to two witnesses of absolute truths from two irreconcilable continuities, one a force birth and divine purpose, and the other, a being who was the purpose, undefined, uncontained, construction. Michael Demiurgos stood at the edge of the source, a bastion of will and the divine force of the presence made manifest. Wings folded not by feather but by burning law, he held in his being the fire of creation, the dunamis Demiurgos, the same explosive primordial energy that the presence used to birth all that is, all that will be, and all that ever dreamed of being. He was the word's might. With his brother Lucifer, they had once unraveled the raw chaos and shaped it into meaning. Michael was stability, purpose, law, and divine power in its most condensed, wrathful form. The universe bowed not to his ego, but to the function he served, a walking singularity of creative consequence. But then the rift came. It wasn't summoned by spell, nor triggered by fate. It simply occurred, like a contradiction bleeding into reality, an unwelcome variable in a perfectly constructed divine equation. The Beyonder entered. No fanfare, no storm, just presence. He appeared not as a god, but as an idea, not formed of atoms, nor threads of destiny, but concept, a being from a realm outside the multiversal construct. He had observed, he had absorbed, and now he had arrived. Michael saw him first not with eyes, but with essence. This being did not resonate with the logos. It didn't answer to the presence's will, nor did it fit into the folds of the source's infinite code. Michael's power reached toward it instinctively, like blood reacting to poison, but found nothing to grasp. No soul, no creation energy, no origin point. You do not belong, Michael said, his voice rippling into realms that trembled at syllables, shaped from the divine fire. Beyonder's gaze, neither hostile nor kind, was indifferent. Neither do you, he answered, not in the way you believe. Michael stepped forward, each movement rewriting physics around his form. All that is touched by the presence. Even those who defy him serve his shape. You, however, you are alien, unformed. I am not a product, Beyonder replied, tone neither proud nor dismissive. I am prior to product. You operate within structure, divine, yes, but still architecture. I am beyond architecture, beyond narrative. I am not of your fiction, angel. The tension between them thickened, not from pride or wrath, but from ontological incompatibility. Two beings representing fundamentally different metaphysical premises were facing each other. One forged with the authority of a supreme being within a story, the other a being who was the author's imagination given. Unfiltered autonomy. Michael narrowed his gaze. Do you claim to be above the presence? I do not claim. I am not a rival. I am not a god. I am what gods dream of when they try to escape their own story. I am not a piece on the board. I am the writer discovering that the game never required a board at all. Michael's wings unfurled, each one a statement of divine will, illuminating multiversal veins across the emptiness, as stars bent under their exposure. Such arrogance. Without context, power means nothing. Creation requires intention. Without it, you are void. And here the Beyonder smiled. It was a faint thing, but in its subtlety existed an eternity of contradiction. Your context is a chain. You are bound by what must be, by what should be. You are a function in a divine equation. I, however, am the glitch that reveals the equation was optional. Michael summoned the fire of the dunamis Demiurgos. Its light was unbearable, a roaring sea of pure generative force capable of birthing and annihilating infinite universes in a single breath. In him was the fury of righteous design, the patience of cosmological duty, and the certainty of one who had never doubted his purpose. Yet Beyonder remained still. You mistake chaos for superiority, Michael said. Power without alignment is not truth, it is noise. And what is your alignment but the need to make sense of something senseless? Beyonder's voice did not rise, yet it echoed louder than Michael's fire. You defend reality's syntax as though the sentence cannot be rewritten, but I was never the sentence. I was the writer discovering language itself was never mandatory. The multiverse began to pulse around them, realities folding, trembling, fraying like brittle strings touched by fingers too ancient to comprehend. Michael's force alone held reality steady, as layers of existence shattered from the weight of the conversation. Your perspective is flawed, Michael pressed, because it lacks opposition. You have never been truly tested. Beyonder's smile vanished. That is why I'm here. In that instant, their presences alone reshaped the layers of all known existence. Spectre watched from a distance where even divine judgment dared not speak. The endless turned their heads away. The living tribunal looked on from the Marvel side with silent acknowledgement, remembering the first time this being had toyed with the concepts he was meant to enforce. And still, Michael stood tall, because unlike all others, he was never meant to fear anything. He was the divine engine, the chosen vessel of creation's fire. If there was something greater than him, then it would be tested by the flame he carried. For only fire can purify what pretends to be infinite. Beyonder hovered above the tension now, weightless in form and unshackled by consequence. He did not burn with power. He was the absence of limitation. He did not rise to match Michael. He let Michael rise to meet him. If you believe fire can purify me, angel, then let your fire show me what I am not. And Michael, who had once carved matter from the nothing and fought devils and dreamers alike, spread his arms, and all of creation heard him say, "Then we begin." And across all realities, a silence fell. The kind of silence only broken when two ultimate truths collide, not to destroy one another, but to answer the most primal question the cosmos has ever feared to ask. What happens when purpose faces that which is beyond even the concept of purpose? The answer would begin in the next moment, and the battle, unfathomable, unrepeatable, unrestrained, would write itself into the bones of the Omniverse, not as a memory, but as a wound, and through it, only one would remain, either the divine, fire forged with intent, or the being that reminded the universe that intent was just another word for fear, asterisk. The instant their wills collided, existence itself became secondary. Dimensions warped, timelines unraveled, and layers of reality peeled like brittle paper around them. Their battlefield was not a place, but a condition, a metaphysical crucible, suspended between two narrative engines. One engine was structured and burning, the other fluid and boundless, and neither was willing to yield. Michael struck first. There was no hesitation in him, only clarity. The dunamis Demiurgos surged, outward from his hands, not as fire, but as divine intent crystallized into kinetic devastation. The force was beyond thermonuclear, beyond conceptual. It was the explosion that would have birthed 1,000 universes if not for the Beyonder's presence negating its purpose. The Beyonder did not move. The attack collided with him, and for a split moment, even time seemed to blink. An entire multiverse was born from the shockwave, and just as quickly, it collapsed in on itself as the Beyonder's essence erased its need to exist. Michael's wings expanded wider, each feather a fractal containing the codes of universes he had forged in obedience to the presence. His sword formed, not forged, not summoned, but declared, materializing through the divine grammar of creation. When he spoke, it wasn't speech. It was cosmic law. "You are not part of the design," Michael thundered. "I am not bound by the need for design." The Beyonder replied calmly, stepping forward, walking through the wreckage of potential realities like they were mist. Michael swung. The blade, capable of splitting the source veil, tore through. Metaphysical essence, aiming not for body, but for the core of Beyonder's being, his narrative. The strike was meant to delete him from the structure of continuity, not kill him, erase him, and yet it passed through. Not because the Beyonder evaded it, but because the concept of deletion had no relevance to him. He did not exist in the way Michael's weapon demanded. He was not a thread in a tapestry. He was the gap between weaves, the imperfection that reveals the illusion of perfection. Michael's eyes narrowed, for the first time showing something he hadn't felt in eons: tension. "You are formless. I am unshaped," Beyonder corrected. "Not incomplete, just unnecessary to your pattern." Michael expanded his essence further, unleashing his full state. He no longer resembled a humanoid being. His form now was an avatar of divine causality, a cosmic furnace from which galaxies cried in awe. His voice echoed across the bleed between multiverses. He began to weave, constructing a prison of layered purpose and divine algorithms that could contain anything that did not match the will. But Beyonder watched, and then gently raised his hand. In that moment, the entire structure, Michael's woven command of intention, began to unravel. Not violently, not destructively. It simply stopped making sense. Cause and effect slipped. Laws contradicted themselves. The logic of divinity bent, not under weight, but under irrelevance. It was like trying to write music for an ear that could not be born. Michael staggered a step, not in pain, but in the realization that his absolute, which had been honored by gods and feared by devils, meant nothing to the one before him. He gathered all his being. The full power of the dunamis erupted from him in a torrent so pure it threatened to reignite the presence's voice itself. It wasn't just energy, it was the original spark of creation, the fire that had fueled everything from Eden to Apocalypse. The Beyonder let it wash over him. Reality tore. The cosmological spine cracked. Onlookers beyond existence screamed in silent terror. And yet, when it ended, the Beyonder stood, untouched, serene. Then he spoke, and this time his voice did rise. It didn't thunder. It didn't quake. It simply commanded reality to listen. You are magnificent, Michael. You are the blade of a divine story. But do you understand the prison you defend? Michael, burning with purpose, raised his blade again. There is no prison in order, only when you've never lived. Without it, the Beyonder gestured, and around them, choices began to manifest, not events, but possibilities. Paths where Michael was not the soldier. Paths where he questioned. Paths where he rebelled. They all unfurled, infinite permutations of self, and then collapsed. Why? Because Michael was not made to choose. He was made to serve, and that was the Beyonder's victory. Not in power, not in violence, but in truth. You cannot defeat me, Michael, the Beyonder said, stepping forward. Not because you are weak, but because your very existence requires boundaries that I do not share. You are. I am what comes before being. Michael, for all his strength, all his loyalty, could not argue. His entire function, his power, his divinity, it was all relational, dependent, tied to a source. The dunamis Demiurgos was a gift, the sword a tool, the will a duty, but the Beyonder? He was no tool, no servant, no gift. He was the reason tools broke. Michael made one final charge, one last attempt to force order upon the undefined. It was not for victory, it was for purpose. And in that charge, he unleashed a scream of everything he was. Angel, creator, destroyer, believer. Beyonder met it with silence, not resistance, silence. A void so total, so final, it swallowed the very idea of opposition. Michael struck, and in doing so, he passed through again, not because he failed, but because the act itself lacked meaning in Beyonder's paradigm. And then Beyonder placed his hand on Michael's chest, not as an attack, but as a statement. You are still beautiful, Michael, but your beauty is a song sung in a language I never needed. And with that, the fire dimmed. The dunamis faded. Michael collapsed to one knee, not vanquished, not destroyed, but outgrown. For the first time, the might of divine structure had faced something not evil, not chaotic, but superior through irrelevance. The Beyonder did not gloat. He did not punish. He merely existed. And as he turned and left, the multiverse itself had to re-understand what it meant to contain things. Because now it had contained something that was never meant to be contained. Michael remained, kneeling in the ashes of collapsing infinities, eyes glowing with fading fire. He was still divine, still proud. But now he knew. There were some beings that weren't just outside the chain of command. They were never part of the chain to begin with.